Rock and Roll Shin-Soo, episode number 51. My name is Gabe Estel. I'm here with my co-hosts Dennis Levi Leach and Jonathan Getz, and we'd like to welcome a special guest. You might remember him from way back in episode 16, Ricky Cobb. How you doing, Ricky?
Hey, man, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. We're glad you're here. To let everybody know, you can follow Ricky on Twitter at Super70 Sports. He's got a really fun Twitter feed as well as a cool website with a accompanying podcast. That's at super70sports.com. So, keep up the good work there, Ricky, man. We appreciate it. Yeah, and it's opening day today. Everybody's wearing hats. We're excited. So what we're going to do tonight really is really the crux of the show is going to be making our predictions for division winners, the playoffs, and then the World Series. And also, if we have time, we'll share our MVP and Cy Young picks as well. So want to remind everybody that last year's picks didn't go so hot for us. I looked at them, and Jonathan had the Red Sox in the series against the Nationals, and the Nationals winning it.
To my credit, I did have the Nationals winning it. At least they finished above 500.
They did, yeah. Levi had the Mariners over the Dodgers, all right? So, but you know what? Of the two teams that Jonathan had, neither one of them made the playoffs. So the Dodgers at least made the playoffs last year, right? And everybody was
genius.
And Seattle was... For some reason, Seattle was kind of a trendy pick last year as well.
Dude, they look good on paper preseason.
They were the Marlins of the AL.
They were. And then I didn't fare much better. I had the Nationals winning it against the Indians. So Indians also did not make the playoffs. So anyway.
Since I wasn't a part of that show, my claim is that I nailed everything.
Exactly.
We have no evidence to the contrary.
Right?
So,
You didn't miss a
I
thing.
was looking to run the table again this year.
Yeah.
With my picks.
Perfect bracket.
That's not true at all.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and kick it off with the American League, guys. What we'll do is each of us will share our division winners. And then should we also share, the who we think will go to the series, or should we just do that afterwards?
Who will make it to the ALCS?
Okay.
Yeah.
ALCS then.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So Ricky, being our special guest, wearing a beautiful Expos hat, why don't you go ahead and just walk us through how you see the AL shaking out? Man.
Oh, wow. Well, put me on the spot here.
Yep.
I find the AL East really interesting. I think that you have a horse race with Toronto and Boston, and I think New York is going to be quite good this year. I just have a feeling about the Yankees. I love the acquisition of Chapman. I know that he's out for the first 30 games or whatever of the season with the domestic abuse policy or whatever that situation was that he had in his home life. But I love what they have there with Betances and Chapman and Andrew Miller.
Yeah.
I think the Yankees can really turn a lot of ball games into 6-inning games, very similar to what we've seen the Royals do.
Yeah, it kind of compensates for that rotation being a little iffy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they certainly they need health in their rotation, and they need some guys to come through. The everyday lineup is, certainly we know that some of those guys are pretty long in the tooth. But the Yankees are kind of my breakout pick in the American League, and I'm going to take New York to win the East.
Okay.
In the Central, I'm, the last year I wasn't a believer in Kansas City. I thought that 2014 had a little bit of the feeling of a fluke about it. I picked the Royals fourth, I believe, in the Central last year. I just wasn't buying it. I thought they were going to
haters be hating.
And I'm not making that mistake this year. I mean, I don't know where they're going to finish, but I'm a believer at this point. Okay, they've shown me twice, and I like the Royals to win the Central. I think Cleveland is kind of a trendy pick right now as far as what I'm seeing from a lot of pundits.
Yeah.
They have a nice young rotation, and Certainly, I can see that. I like Cleveland to finish second in that division, and then after that, it doesn't look that strong. I see you wearing your Sox hat. I know you're a Sox guy, but this whole Adam and Drake LaRoche soap opera does not bode well for the. I don't know. I think they're a little bit of a dysfunctional franchise. The Sox, I think, are gonna struggle. I think Detroit's gonna struggle as well. Minnesota, I think, is a little bit of a sleeper team. I think Minnesota could surprise some people.
Up and coming, definitely.
Yeah. So I like them to finish third in that division and probably be over 500. Over in the West, I really like Houston. They have a very good bullpen as well, a deep bullpen. Can't argue with the top of their rotation. They've got the reigning Cy Young winner in Dallas Keuchel. Correa is such an exciting player. George Springer is another exciting player. So I think Houston's going to be quite good. I like Houston to take the West. So as far as my division winners go, I'm going to go east to west: Yankees, Royals, and Stros. Okay. Now, do you want me to give you my wild cards, or are we?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. Let's just take care of the AL.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if we're going to just take care of it, I'll go with the Blue Jays to grab a wild card out of the AL East. I love that lineup, top to bottom. They can mash with anybody. They're going to score a lot of runs. Marcus Stroman could possibly have a really big year. If he has a huge year and they get some more starting pitching, they could certainly easily win that division. But I'm a believer in their bats, no question about that. So I'll take them. And then for my other wild card, it's got to be somebody, right? I'll take the Texas Rangers as the other wild card club coming out of the AL. And are we doing ALCS matchup?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
ALCS matchup for me is Kansas City and Houston.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So rematch of last year's divisional.
Now, the governor needs to be careful about his tweets.
Yep.
Right? Wait until the last out is recorded.
Yep. Yeah. We won't ever let that go. That wonderful tweet that the governor sent out before they had won that series. I'm high on Houston as well. I think, although with the West though, I think for some reason that Houston, I feel like the experience of Texas is going to win them the division, and then Houston's going to get the wild card. Mm-hmm. I think that Houston ultimately will go to the ALCS. And Ricky, along your lines of thinking about the Yankees, I'm also more optimistic about the Yankees than I am the Red Sox. I know a lot of people are really high on the Red Sox again, and I'm not quite sure why. As the lineup is a little iffy, and the rotation after David Price is really iffy. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, we got David Price, and
it fixes everything else. Yeah.
I don't quite get that, and so I felt like the Yankees rotation is a bit more balanced, and certainly their bullpen, even though the Red Sox did shore up their bullpen as well. But I think Toronto to win that division and the Yankees to get the wild card is pretty plausible. But Toronto's Mashers, man, jeez, it's hard not to think that they'll be back in the ALCS.
You're gonna have 4 or 5 guys with 25 plus home runs,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Bautista, Encarnacion, Donaldson. Bautista and Donaldson will get MVP votes probably. Mm-hmm. Bautista will piss off some people with some bat flips, and Donaldson for being fiery. But it's funny though how the AL Central was the hardest for me, because I feel like any two teams could come out of nowhere, and any two teams could just lay an egg. And ironically, I don't have the Royals making the playoffs.
Huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
I actually like Gabe. I'm kind of high on the White Sox for some reason to contend. But I think the Twins are going to take that next step. The Twins impressed a lot of people last year.
Yeah.
Paul Molitor leading the way there as a manager. He was one of my first favorite baseball players, so I guess I believe in him because of that as a manager.
Yeah, they don't have an ace. I mean, they've got some
they don't.
It's like what they got, like Phil Hughes, Irvin Santana,
couple younger dudes.
Pelfrey, maybe? Did Pelfrey go there?
Yeah.
So but yeah, I agree. They have some young talent. I don't know if they're quite there yet, but they'll contend, I think.
Yeah. Brian Dunsing is also, Brian Dunsing and Trevor May. Guys like that, but no, I think that the lineup is interesting because of Sano, obviously, and Dozier's not bad, and then the young guys. Who was the
Buxton's the guy everybody's waiting to break out.
Yeah, I think it's more likely that their import is going to produce a bit more than Buxton.
I'm excited about him.
Yeah, I'm sorry. His name's escaping me right now.
Yeah. Byung-ho out of the park.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. He's got some pretty prodigious bat flips. So,
yeah, he does.
I'd like to see him connect about 30 times. Might be pretty fun.
Yeah, so I have the Twins winning that division, but I do have Houston over the Blue Jays in 7 in the ALCS.
Okay, so Houston over...
Who was your wild card?
Yeah, who was you said the Yankees is a wild card? Who was your other wild card?
To recap, division winners, the Blue Jays, the Twins, and the Rangers, and the wild cards are the Yankees and the Astros.
Okay. Cool. All right. Okay. Levi, what about you, man? Let it rip.
Similar to both of the Ricky and Jonathan, but to go pretty quick here, AL East, I went with the Blue Jays. I feel like the Blue Jays are in the position that the Royals were last year, to where I don't think enough people are giving credit to the Blue Jays. I think they're going to be one of the best teams, if not possibly the best team this year.
They might have the best record in the AL.
Yeah, they could be one of those teams. Yeah, and so I picked them. AL Central, I went with KC. I feel like KC has now gotten over enough of a hump to where those players now, they don't know of the era of not winning games.
It's a good point.
You know what I mean? I feel like they've gotten past that now to where
they went to 2 consecutive World Series.
They're not going to revert to like becoming the 1980s Royals.
No.
Or whatever.
And late 80s Royals. Yeah,
the late 80s.
And so in the West, I went with Houston just because of the talent that's there, and it was tough. I had thought about giving it to the Rangers, but that's where I placed them as my wild card. My 2 wild cards are the Rangers and Cleveland. So my ALCS consists of Toronto and Houston. So
yeah, same as mine. Nice.
Yeah, are we saying who we think, or no? We'll wait to do World Series. Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
So that was my rundown. We'll do it again. Blue Jays, Kansas City, Houston, wild card, Rangers, and Cleveland. ALCS is Toronto and Houston.
All right.
It's funny so far. It's like, yeah, we're not giving the Blue Jays the respect, but we all have them kind of going to the ALCS, right? But it's whether they can make that step.
Yeah, right.
To the next level.
Who do you said for the ALCS, Levi? You said Toronto and who else?
Houston.
Oh, in Houston. Okay. Cool. All right. Okay, so for me, starting in the East, it would be hard for the Blue Jays not to win it. So I've got to go with them for the reasons that are aforementioned now.
To me, it was the only one in my mind that I thought was almost a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm.
That out of all the divisions in both leagues, when I was choosing, I was like, well, this seems like the most common sense one to me.
easiest division to pick the top, much harder to pick the middle, in that division because I don't think Baltimore is going to be terrible.
No.
I don't I don't think they have what it takes to seal the deal or anything like that, but they've got a lot of power, not as much as the Blue Jays, but there's still some hitters on that team. You got Machado coming into, kind of MVP like.
Yeah, he'll contend.
Yeah.
The Orioles are interesting because it's like you want to think, oh yeah, they're really going to contend this year, and then you just see that they have kind of fallen off the pace a bit, and they haven't improved everywhere that they've needed to. And Adam Jones is just a year older.
Yeah, I often equate. I think them and the Pirates are kind of similar teams over the last couple of years. Like a lot of talent, and I guess it's kind of starting to age a little bit now, but just not quite enough to get over the finish line. So yeah, I'll say the Blue Jays to win the division, and yeah, I agree with you guys with the Yankees, but I didn't feel strongly enough to say that they were gonna get the wild card just because I think there's some other talent around the AL, and I just don't like that rotation. I think it's going to be kind of they're going to get beat up pretty badly, I think, but the bullpen will be strong when they get out there, but I think the opportunities will be fewer than most people think. So yeah, for the East I've got the Jays. For the Central I'm going to go with the Royals. All these guys are in their prime now. I mean, Hosmer, Moustakas, like all those guys are in their prime and they still haven't totally reached their ceiling yet.
Right.
That's what makes this team really dangerous,
Well, that's part of what makes me kind of worry about them is that, these guys didn't hit their ceiling, and yet they somehow managed to eke out all these wins because of BABIP and pitching with runners in scoring position and these kind of random events that they might not have as much control over. That the things that happen that Fangraphs and Zips don't like, and it's why they always project 70 wins.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can't help but shake that feeling of this is when is the jig up?
Yeah, it's weird that like a lot of the prognosticators picked them to win 70 games because I feel like that outfield they had 2 years ago with Gordon, Aoki, and Kane, that was kind of like a sabermetrician's wet dream, that outfield, if you look at just how old those guys hit. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, I think that core is still fairly young and still, I think it might have a couple of years left in them still, so I don't see the Royals going anywhere but winning the division. And then in the West, I think Houston is in a good spot. They're, it's with a rotation, I would give their rotation even a bit of an edge over the Royals. Last year Houston had 6 quality starters, which few teams can say that. So I like the Astros, and I think they'll. Correct me if I'm wrong. They picked up Carlos Gomez, or did they get him last year?
Yeah. They had him for the.
They had him last year. Okay, all right. Well, his first full season with them. So yeah, he's an exciting player. And then with Springer and Altuve, Altuve's just a machine. He'll be an MVP candidate.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll take the Astros, and then for the wild card, I'm gonna go with the Rangers and a team no one has picked yet. I don't think I'll take the Tigers as my other wild card.
It clicks in Detroit.
Yeah, I think so. If Anibal Sanchez has a good year, the rotation isn't bad. Verlander looks like he's returning to form. Looks like he's starting to look like the Verlander of old, or at least maybe like 75% of the Verlander of old, which means he's still a good pitcher. And they brought in Zimmerman. So yeah, I think they're going to be all right. I think like there's not much, and they brought in Justin Upton as well. There's not much, they've got to win it with this group of guys soon. So I think this year they make a push for that. So so my wild card picks are the Rangers and the Tigers. So just to recap, AL East, I've got Toronto, AL Central, Kansas City, AL West, Houston, and then my wild cards are the Rangers and the Tigers. So cool. You know what? One thing, guys, we'll take
who's your ALCS?
Oh, I'm sorry. My ALCS, I've got Toronto and Houston.
All right.
So that's my ALCS.
And Ricky, what was yours again?
My LCS was Kansas City and Houston.
Okay. All right.
All right.
So everybody, we all had Houston in the ALCS, I believe.
Yep. Yeah. Good stuff going on down there. A little bit of an intermission topic here, guys. Tonight, we're recording this on Sunday, is opening day, and 3 games today, right? And then the whole slate of games tomorrow. To me, tomorrow is opening day. I know that's even if the White Sox were playing today, I would still think tomorrow is opening day. Now, I wanted to get you guys' take on it before we jump into our NL picks. I don't like this butchering of opening day. Butchering's probably too strong of a word. I don't like this spreading it out over 2 days. To me, it feels anticlimactic. What do you guys think?
I agree totally. As a Cubs fan, the Cubs today played the Angels in an exhibition match
at the Angels Park. And
it wasn't opening day. Tomorrow is officially opening day.
That's weird.
Between the Cubs and the Angels.
That's especially weird.
Yeah. And so what it turned into it wasn't televised. I found somehow an Angels feed of it. There was no Cubs. The Cubs were not broadcasting it, not on radio or TV. And so I got to see
they don't want you to even think
I got
about
to
the
see
game.
the last half of the game, and by the 6th inning, all the starters were gone, and it was it was basically both teams minor leaguers, and even the announcer for the Angels was like, I kind of just noticed it's turned into a minor league ball game here, folks, because they showed the board and it was like all names no one had ever heard.
Yeah, right. All guys being designated.
Right. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, right after the game, because literally tomorrow they got to send them out.
Yeah.
I'm just grateful that we didn't have the opening day, 5 days before opening day in Japan or somewhere,
right.
Where you got to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning
to set your lineup.
It. That for me is the worst when that happens.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I think that I like it to be on Sunday, but I think everybody should play on Sunday.
Yeah. Put all the teams on one day.
I like it better than Monday.
Yeah.
Because it actually gives you a chance to get kids out to the ballpark. God forbid we encourage kids to come out to the ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, people, everyone's schedule's a little freer on Sunday, so I could see the logic in putting it on Sunday.
Not in total defense of it, but in kind of defense of that. A lot of schools are on spring break right now.
Yeah.
So,
right.
I mean, some kids, I'm sure their parents are cool enough to take them to a game on spring break or opening day.
Yeah.
But I do agree they should all be on one day, and it probably should be Sunday.
Yeah.
I cast a vote for Monday. I'm crusty and old. Even if I don't get to see
checking scores at work and stuff.
I want it to be on Monday, darn it. I don't know. Get off my lawn.
And you won't even watch highlights. You wait till the box scores come the next morning in the newspaper.
You're like, I only read line scores.
If there's a game on the West Coast late at night, I'm waiting until Wednesday morning to find out what happened.
I do like the fact that the White Sox start in Oakland, so I'll be staying up late here the next couple nights. So.
Same thing with me. We're in Los Angeles, and what's weird is, and this has become like a tradition with the Cubs, and I don't get, is so the Cubs are obviously on the road to start the year, but when they get back to Wrigley Field, they've done this now for the last however many years, whether the Cubs were on the road or starting at Wrigley Field. They play one game, then the next day they're off.
Mm-hmm.
Then they play the next games against, and I've never understood that.
Yeah, that's where they distributed it a bit more.
Yeah. These exhibition games at the teams at a major league park before opening day, right before opening day, that's been going on for a few years now. So it's a weird trend, and I don't like it. It would feel even more anticlimactic if I were there and I was rooting for that team.
Yeah, because it's like tomorrow's game means something.
Yeah, right.
Almost.
I do like the terribly wonderful coincidence of the Mets being in Kansas City this opening weekend, which was determined before the World Series.
Oh yeah, yeah. They had to sit and I watched the pregame and everything.
Yeah.
The Mets had to like stand and watch all the ceremony.
And the highlights from the World Series, and then on Tuesday they're gonna do it again with the ring ceremony. So they're really spreading out the little punctures there. So that's fun.
Are you guys getting the package? Do you get like the MLB?
I did the one team package, the new $85 a year package. Yeah.
Ricky, you want to know old school? I'm going just radio this year.
Hey, wow.
Seriously.
$20 a year, man.
Respect
good
that.
deal.
Just
it is a steal. For the audio only package. Yeah, that is nice. I had that a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. I listened to a couple games this morning, or during the day, and then before the Royals game this evening. So.
Those are nice for late games too, because there's just always something comforting about late baseball. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I love it. If it's like 11 p.m. Central Time and like baseball's still going on, it just makes me feel warm and fuzzy.
It's like a proverbial cup of hot cocoa.
It is.
Yeah, it is. I agree with that.
Yeah. Plus, I've got memories of the times I would stay at my grandparents and the White Sox would be out west and. Just my grandpa would leave the radio on while he fell asleep. It's a pleasant memory just to hear the announcers in the other room so late. So anyway,
that's cool.
All right, guys, let's go on to the NL now. You know what? We'll do this. We'll start with Levi this time. So Levi, why don't you go ahead and walk us through your NL picks?
All righty. Earlier this afternoon, I had picked one team for the NL East, and about 2 hours ago, I had a change of heart, and I flipped them with. So I'm going with the Mets again in the East, and I'm going to go with the Cubs, obviously in the Central. I'm a Cubs fan, and the West was the toughest division for me. I ended up with San Francisco just because of the pedigree of winning is there, but I feel like San Francisco is at the point where they're ready to get like knocked off their pedestal. You know what I mean? I think a team in the West is going to step up to finally give them a really good run for their money. But
you still think they'll win the division?
Yeah, I still think they're going to win, but I think this could be one of the last years of their of their perennial greatness. The wild cards. The one I flipped with the East was the Nationals. I had the Nationals originally winning the East, and I flipped them to the wild card with the Mets.
Probably last year's biggest disappointment.
Oh, yeah.
I would say, the Nationals.
I agree, yeah. And then the other National League wild card I picked was the Dodgers.
Still hanging with the Dodgers, huh?
With the wild card, yeah. I think they're going to eke by enough to get into the playoffs, basically.
It's hard for me to ascertain how they're going to do this year, the Dodgers, that is, because they've got a core of guys that are getting a little bit older, but they also have a lot of young talent coming up. They have a good farm system.
I feel like they're the type of team, at least the ownership is, to where if at the All-Star break they're doing awful, they will do whatever it takes to at least eke into the playoffs.
And they might to shore up that pitching. Pitching.
Oh, yeah. They've got deep pockets, so they can pull the trigger on a move. They've got, they're in a good spot. They've got deep pockets and they've got young talent. So a trade is easy to pull off for a superstar pitcher, whoever's out there,
Yeah. So who will
right
they
there.
trade Yasiel Puig to is the question.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. His days in Dodger blue are probably numbered.
My NLCS then is a rematch of last year, Cubs and Mets.
All right. Well, you know what? I want to get Ricky's take on this as well before we move on to Jonathan's picks, because he's a Cubs fan. What do you guys see as concerns for the Cubs this year? I mean, everybody's saying they're going to be great. That's listen. I'm getting a little sick of hearing that. But what concerns do you have about what's predicted to be a great team?
They're loaded top to bottom, their everyday lineup. I think the only concerns that you really have in the everyday lineup is, just hoping that they stay healthy.
Exactly.
Because if they stay healthy, top to bottom, I don't really see any weaknesses there overall. I mean, Schwarber's a defensive liability, but if he's if he's raking and hitting balls on top of the who cares?
Yeah. 2 errors a game, I'll take it as long as he's got
guy,
right.
Out in left field for a lot of years. So, so the everyday lineup looks terrific to me. The rotation, the concern that I would have maybe a little bit, maybe the bullpen regresses a bit. Arrieta would probably be my number one concern. Not that I think that he's going to break down, but the concern that I would have is the number of innings that he threw last year. He looked like he was pretty gassed by the time
absolutely
they went to the playoffs, and so you wonder, will he be able to maintain that kind of effectiveness throughout this season as well?
Yeah.
And so I would have a little bit of a concern about that. Back into the rotation maybe concerns me a little bit, but I think on paper the Cubs are probably the best team in baseball.
Yeah, I agree with almost every, all you said. My concern is probably my biggest concern would be the bullpen. Just to, hopefully they can.
If you have a weak link, it's that.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the starting lineup, like you said, as long as they stay healthy, they should have like crazy numbers.
Yeah.
And part of me would be more scared in years past because it seemed like we'd never had depth, and it seems like the Cubs are at a point in their existence where there is depth. There are guys that we are sending to the minor leagues that are pretty decent players.
We'll have a good bench.
And God forbid something happens and we have to call some people up. It's not like they're going to be able to produce at the level of some of these starters, but we have guys like Kawasaki and I think Caesar broke with the team, didn't he? He's going to be actually, I think, on the starting day roster. But guys like him are down in the minors ready if we need them. And it's like, I can't ever remember a time growing up where it seemed like we had that much of a depth.
Yeah, and got a lot of insurance policies.
Yeah, so. And hopefully we don't have to cash any of them in. But in years past, I would have been like, if the first baseman or the third baseman goes down, it's like it's over.
Yeah.
And now I God forbid, I don't feel like the Cubs would tank as bad as they would in years past.
Yeah.
I feel like the depth is there.
Absolutely. I mean, it's testimony to the job that Theo Epstein and Jed Hoyer have done. I mean, last year I think we all kind of thought it was a year early. If you were a Cubs fan, it was like let's enjoy this.
Oh yeah,
this team's at least probably a year ahead of schedule.
Yeah, it was all just like cream on the pie to me because It was like I wasn't even expecting to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, and this year the Cubs look like they could be the bullies of the National League, and that's not I think for a Cubs fan, you're kind of uncomfortable because
right. Yeah, I don't know how to handle.
You're just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Hey, wait a minute, we're not supposed to be this good.
Yeah.
But on paper, they're that good and young.
I'll mention two concerns that you guys didn't touch on. All right, and like I'm a Sox fan, but I'm not a Cubs hater, so I want to preface that these are just what I think are legitimate concerns.
You're the one, huh?
Yeah, I'm the one. Yeah, right. I can't speak for all other Sox fans. The Mets took care of you guys pretty handily. Just saying. All right. I'm not saying that can happen again. But that Mets young pitching is probably only going to get better.
They strike people out.
They've got Steven Matz as well, who's the one guy that not everybody mentions because he's been overshadowed by the other three. If he comes into his own and you get to the playoffs with the Mets again, I think you could have some trouble. Could you beat them? Sure. You guys got a hell of an offense. You could certainly beat them. But if those Mets pitchers hold down your offense, the fact that New York they've got a decent offense, but not a great one. That might be all they need. You know what I mean? Just for those Mets starters to keep the Cubs in check again. And I don't know, man. If I were a Cubs fan and it came down to NLCS and I was meeting the Mets again, I would be a little anxious. I would.
I mean, I totally agree with everything you're saying. I think that experience was a lot more of a learning experience for those younger players than maybe what a lot of people want to give them credit for. I think all those young guys on the Cubs learned a lot about patience at the plate and, waiting for their pitches and stuff like that. But I think the Cubs are a better team than the Mets. I do. And not just because I'm a Cubs fan.
I would say overall, you're right, that they are a better team. I would still give the Mets rotation.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah. And with Arrieta, it's going to be hard to repeat next year's it's impossible to repeat last year's performance. But I think he's come into his own as a good pitcher who will be good for a few years. And then the other concern I was going to mention, and maybe this isn't a big one with the Cubs, is what if all these guys? You had 4 rookies last year who had really breakout years, and then Rizzo and the other guys are still pretty young too, other than Zobrist. You might have more pitchers figuring these guys out a little bit more. Beyond the Mets. That's a possibility. It's another year in the league. They had the offseason to review these guys a little bit more. I don't know. That could be a variable as well, maybe.
Sure.
All right. So, Jonathan, what about you? Let's hear your NL picks.
Well, I too like the Mets and their pitching and getting guys like Steven Matz added into that rotation. So I definitely have the Mets in the East, and then the Cubs in the Central. The Giants in the West. I think the Giants are going to go ahead and that rotation is going to lead them. Though I'm not terribly impressed by the lineup necessarily.
They've won the other World Series with not that great a lineup either.
True.
So
yeah, but they just find guys who can eke out the runs that they need. But Pittsburgh and Arizona as wild cards. I think Pittsburgh finally breaks through and wins a series.
Okay.
And I like them in the NLCS. However, I like them against the Mets because, like we said, the Cubs the Cubs have 5 starters projected to strike out more than 100 times. And I think everybody in the Mets rotation is projected to strike out above average amount of hitters. And that's still an advantage to the Mets. And so I'll take the Mets over the Pirates in a clean sweep of the NLCS, though the Pirates finally make it to the NLCS.
I'm gonna see Levi flying out to New York to break DeGrom's arm or something like that, right? Just a bunch of mob guys hit Matt Harvey's apartment, Anyway, all right, so. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But anyway, I like the Diamondback picks, Jonathan. The Diamondbacks pick, I do. I think they're ready. I think they're ready earlier than people think.
Yeah, so, and the notable absence there is the Dodgers, and I think they're going to regress a little bit even more. And beyond Kershaw, that rotation's pretty iffy.
Yeah, they might have to kind of refocus a little bit after this season. The Dodgers, obviously it was spend, and now it might have to be let's bring up some of this young talent. Let's see if we can get rid of people like Andre Ethier and Carl Crawford, and there's a lot of dead weight contracts. So anyway, all right, Ricky, what about you in the NL, man? How's it going to shake out?
Well, over in the East, I'm a little bit like Levi. I have waffled a bit back and forth between the Mets and the Nationals. I think Dusty Baker usually plays well with a veteran ball club, especially when he first gets to a team. I had the pleasure of interviewing Dusty a couple of months ago for my book, and the conversation kind of segged over into the Nationals and what he's expected, and he seems really loose and ready to make one more go at it, to have a shot at winning a ring as a manager. So I think that, as you noted earlier, they were the biggest disappointment in baseball last year, probably. So, they're going to have a second bite at the apple here this year. If we can keep Papelbon from choking their best player, that would help. Harper certainly came into his own last year and demonstrated that, if he's not the best player in baseball, he's right there in the top 2 or 3. So, so there's some things to feel good about. Steven Strasburg maybe has really still never had that big breakout year, that his talent, would indicate that maybe at some point you would expect that he's going to go about 20-7, and put up some obscene numbers. And Scherzer's tough. Having said all that, at the end of the day, I'm going to pick the Mets to win the division, and for the reasons that you guys have already articulated. That rotation is so good. So good. I mean, I've got a man crush on Syndergaard, and he might be the third, or he might be the third, fourth guy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So those guys are just nasty. I mean, just nasty. If they stay healthy, and as Gabe, as you were saying, in a short series, being able to run out that kind of pitching is a great equalizer. In the Central, I like the Cubs. I think the Cubs would be my pick to have the best record in baseball this year. I think the Cubs will win 95 games, 95, 96, 97, something like that would be my pick. So I think that the Cubs will take the Central in pretty good fashion. Over in the West, I'm going to go with San Francisco. Again, Bochy is so good. It's an even numbered year, so I'm gonna like them for that reason.
They make a lot of moves too.
Yeah. LA has some really good young players. I mean, Puig, we're still waiting to see if he can put it all together and not drive everybody crazy in the process. Jock Peterson had a really good first half and then just couldn't hit the ball in the second half of the season, but I'm still a believer that he's a plus player. Seager is probably the odds-on favorite to be the rookie of the year in the NL. What concerns me about the Dodgers is, Carl Crawford, running him out there a lot. Chase Utley, again, you're talking about somebody who's, the carcass of what used to be Chase Utley.
Sure.
I mean, I guess it's, if you get bonus points for just steamrolling people, maybe that plays. But what really concerns me about the Dodgers, other than maybe having a couple of holes in their lineup that just suck, is the rotation after Kershaw.
Yeah.
Kazmaier, he's all right. I mean, that was their free agent play, or, I suppose their main free agent play, but the rotation worries me a little bit. Arizona, I think, is an intriguing team. Greinke, obviously at the top of that rotation. Goldschmidt. I mean, Arizona is one of the teams that realistically they could have the MVP in the Cy Young winner. Those guys have that kind of talent. Mm-hmm. Having said that, I hope that I wish a pox on their house for their new uniforms. With, all this funky stuff going on.
Have they ever had a good looking? I mean, granted, it's a young franchise, relatively speaking, but they've never had a good looking uniform.
As long as it says D-backs on it, it will never look.
Oh yeah. Yeah, especially like when the script where it looks like D-bags.
Yeah.
Like
if you just take a glance at it, you're like, D-bags? What?
Yeah, that's a questionable thought. I wonder if anybody in the organization thought about how much that sounded like D-bags when they called themselves D-bags. But so my picks, I'm going to go Mets in the East, Cubs in the Central, San Francisco out West, and my wild cards are Washington and Pittsburgh. And for the NLCS, I like that series to be the Mets and the Nationals.
All right.
So at the end of the day, the hopeful Cubs fan, I'm going to predict about 96 wins and then losing in the first round of the playoffs.
All right.
That seems like what would happen to us.
Yeah.
A big workup, and then, in about 4 or 5 days, it's all over with.
Jonathan, who did you pick for the NLCS? I'm sorry, I don't.
The Mets and the Pirates.
Mets and Pirates. Okay, thank you. All right, so, for my NL, it's kind of a combination, I guess, of everybody's here. But anyway, in the East, I'm high on the Mets this year for reasons that have already been mentioned. And, I think last year we saw Yoenis Cespedes hopefully be the player that he can really be, particularly during the second half. I think he's going to be an MVP candidate. I don't think he's going to win it, but I think he'll finish in the top top 4 or 5, I think, for MVP this year. And he's exciting. I like him more than a lot of people do. I like the fact that he buys farm animals and just he's kind of a weirdo, which I like. I like baseball needs weirdos. So I'm yeah. So I'm about Yenis. I like him, yo. Keep up the good work, yo. So yeah. So I've got the Mets, and then obviously like everybody, looking at predictions, I don't even think. It's hard to find someone who didn't pick the Cubs to win the Central, So obviously I take the Cubs. I agree with Ricky, I think mentioned it. They could have the best record in baseball. I think them and Toronto are both capable of winning 100 games. So you might see either one of those teams win 100 games. The West, I'm going to take the Giants. I like the moves that were made because they were already a pretty good team. They just didn't quite have it together. I don't know if it was just because of the odd-numbered year or what, but they were already a pretty good team, and they made them better. Samardzic, I think, will bounce back after a pretty pretty bad year in Chicago, and Cueto, I don't know. He's a little bit of a wild card, but he could return to form and start striking out a lot of guys.
I think Samardzija is more of a wild card than Cueto.
I think so, yeah. I think both of them can be kind of precarious pitchers.
Yeah, true.
But they can both be really good, too, if they turn it on, particularly Cueto. So we'll see. So Mets, Cubs, and Giants, like most, I think everybody else. And then for my wild card, I've got the Diamondbacks as well. I like them. I like them a lot, actually, and I even contemplated them winning that division. I almost picked them to do that, but not quite. And then also for my other wild card team, I've got the Nationals. With the Diamondbacks, I did hear I think like it happened on Friday, that outfield that they have that's really good, AJ Pollock.
Yeah.
I believe he is hurt for most of he's going to be out most of the year.
Yeah, he busted his elbow.
Yeah, that sets them back a little bit. But I was looking at the lineup, and they, it's already pretty good, and then their rotation as well with bringing in Greinke and Miller, and Patrick Corbin being okay as well. Yeah, I think they're going to be earlier than expected. So so I'll take the Diamondbacks as the wild card, and then the Nationals as the wild card as well. I just don't think they're better than the Mets, but I think they'll be a much better team than they were last year, maybe under Dusty's leadership, and then. They had some guys last year that had off years. You had Harper having just an amazing year, and then everybody else on that team was pretty flat. So I think they'll get some guys to bounce back and put together a pretty good season. So, and for my NLCS, I've got a repeat. I've got the Cubs and the Mets. So groovy. All right.
So everybody's World Series pick now?
Let's do it. World Series. Ricky, you're our guest, man. How is the Fall Classic going to play out?
Right, well, I'm going to tell you what's probably not going to happen, okay, which is what I do every year when I pick the World Series. In the AL, as I said, I've got Kansas City and Houston in the ALCS. I'm going to take Kansas City over Houston in 7 to make it 3 World Series appearances in a row. I think that's a bona fide dynasty when you do that. Which, this team doesn't really seem like a dynasty in a way. They seem, as Jonathan was saying, they scrap, they get it together, they win despite Fangraphs. But I'm going to pick them to get back to the series out of the American League, and over in the National League, I'm going to take the Mets over the Nationals in 6 to be the National League representative. So I'm calling for a rematch.
All right.
Of last year's World Series, Mets against the Royals, and my prediction is, dramatic pause, the Mets are going to reverse last year's outcome and beat the Royals in 6 games to be the world champions.
You think that pitching it'll be enough? Yeah.
I'm wagering on that pitching. And Cespedes, having lots of family barbecues through the year, killing and cooking all kinds of animals. I think their everyday lineup is solid, if not spectacular. And that that starting pitching is just so good. So I'm going to hitch my prediction fortunes to Harvey and Syndergaard and DeGrom and Matz and those guys and see what happens.
I wonder if that's ever happened where the 2 years in a row where the previous year's World Series loser won the World Series the next year. Obviously, the Royals did it last year, but if that's ever happened 2 years in a row, where if the Mets did it this year.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
I would have to contact stats.
Yeah.
For that.
That's a good question.
I mean, I can think of some examples of teams losing it and then winning it the following year, but I don't know if they ever played the same team again.
Well, but just for it to happen 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
Where the losing team won it the next year. Not necessarily that it was the same teams, but just the team that lost won it the next year. Anyway.
Cool.
Yes. 1988.
Whoa, you're going to do this.
The Dodgers beat the A's. 89, the A's beat the Giants.
Oh.
But in 87, did the Dodgers lose? The
87 was the Twins and the Cardinals.
That's what I'm saying is that in 2014, the Royals lost the World Series.
Oh, yeah.
In 2015, they won the World Series, and the Mets lost the World Series.
I see.
In 2016, if the Mets win the World Series, and that would be 2 years in a row, where the reigning World Series loser won the next World Series, if that makes sense.
Got it.
I'm sorry for bringing it
It's
up.
making my head hurt, guys. Come on. All right.
I was the one who started it with my dumb pick.
Oh yeah, it's like six degrees of Kevin Bacon over here.
All right. Okay. So, Jonathan, what about you? How does it play out?
I'm gonna nip that whole theory in the bud and say Houston over the Blue Jays in 7. The Blue Jays lose the ALCS again because I like to stick it to the Blue Jays, and the Mets over the Pirates in a clean sweep to set up a Houston Astros New York Mets World Series. That would have sounded really strange about 10 years ago.
Right.
And
Still does, I think.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take Houston's bat firepower over the Mets pitching firepower in 6. Houston wins the World Series 4-2.
It'll make it for a pretty good World Series if that's the match.
That would be fun.
Yeah. Good deal. All right, Levi, let it rip, man.
ALCS, I had the Blue Jays and the Astros. I'm going to say the Astros win it in 5.
Okay.
NLCS, I got the Cubs and Mets. I think it's going to be a nasty one. Cubs win in 7.
All right. I knew somebody's got to pick the Cubs. All right.
So, World Series, we have the Cubs versus the Astros. The homer in me says the Cubs score the most runs ever in a World Series and win 4-2.
Nice.
4-2. Cubs in 6.
Nice.
World Series champions.
Nice.
Hope
You're
you're
not-
right.
Yeah. You're not alone in that prediction. As far as I would say 8. It looks like about 8 out of 10 people are picking the Cubs this year. So yeah. All right. Somebody had to do it. Okay. For me, in the ALCS, I'll take Houston over Toronto. I think the Astros are just going to build on last year's momentum. I think their pitching will be able to quiet the Jays' powerful offense. That's a series that could go into 6 or 7 games. So I'll take the Astros there. In the NLCS, I'm going to go with a rematch, but I'm going to take I'll take the Mets again. I think that pitching is all they need. I mean the Cubs will have a better offense than the Mets, but I think they'll just be able to quiet the Cubs bats, and who knows, might put the Cubs in a good position to win in 2017. Anyway, and then in my World Series, I'm going to go same thing, pitching overpowering an offense, but although the Astros have good pitching too, I'll take the Mets over Houston in the series. So,
All right.
So I'm taking the Mets. So Ricky and I took the Mets. Jonathan took the Astros, right?
Yeah.
Yes, and then Levi takes the Cubs. I like it, guys.
Yep.
All right. Just a couple other observations really quickly. I was looking around the league, and aside from maybe, like the Phillies, the Reds, the Brewers, and the A's, I don't think anybody will have just a god-awful season. Those 4 teams will completely suck, I think. But if you look around the rest of the league, I don't think it'll be that bad. I think everybody will everybody's got a chance of being competitive.
Yeah, when you have that second wild card, it certainly adds a lot more teams into the mix to try.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. So let's quickly do our MVPs and Cy Youngs here. Ricky, we'll start out with you. Just go ahead and give us both awards.
MVP and Cy Young in both leagues.
Yeah, go for it.
I'll go with Steve Trout, MVP in the American League. I realize that's the safe pick, right? I mean, he may not win, but he's going to finish in the top 3 or 4 probably. So, Mike Trout. Did I say Steve Trout? God help.
I like that you said Steve Trout. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm going off the board with 65-year-old Steve Trout.
Comeback player of the century.
That's right.
And a move no one anticipated.
On the World Series pick, but I'm just going out there. No, Mike Trout for MVP, AL Cy Young Award winner. I mean, that's a tough one for me. You know what? Part of me wants to say Chris Sale. Another part of me is I'm going to go with Chris Archer.
Oh, nice. Good pick.
For Cy Young in the American League. And in the National League, most valuable player, I'm going to go with Bryce Harper to repeat. And National League Cy Young, I'm going to go with Clayton Kershaw. Boring, but
that's all right.
Yeah,
those would be the picks.
Yeah. I don't blame you. I too picked Kershaw to win that Cy. He's also one of my favorite players, so that's why I did that, I guess. But yeah, I picked Sale as well. You picked Sale for AL Cy?
I'm going to go with Chris Archer.
I'm sorry, you said Archer.
Yeah.
You mentioned Sale.
I don't know, just add a little wrinkle to it, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
Sale was the guy that I was thinking, but I'm a big Chris Archer fan, so I'll take a flyer on that. But I mean, I think Chris Sale's going to have a great year.
Yeah. And I think he'll keep the White Sox in contention there. So Sale, Cy Young, American League. I had Jose Altuve as the AL MVP, as you foreshadowed earlier, Gabe. So so eloquently for me, and Paul Goldschmidt, Goldie, as the NL MVP.
All right, nice. Levi, what about you?
Well, I didn't give a ton of thought to this until just in the last
Cubs
60
winning.
seconds. Yeah, I homered it all. Cubs are somehow going to win the AL MVP and Cy Young. It's like a bold move. They're just going to sweep them.
Right.
No, I think you got to go with Trout for an AL MVP just because he's kind of the face of that league. And
But what if the Angels finish last? Which they could.
Andre Dawson, 1987.
Right. And so it's like, it doesn't happen often.
It happens. I mean, it doesn't happen often, but I mean, yeah, it happens.
Yeah,
you could say the
Trump's
same
kind of
thing
the
with
guy that
Sale.
goes
Like, Sale's going to be one of the best pitchers in the American League playing for...
I think the White Sox will contend, though.
Okay.
I think the Cy Young, they'll give to a pitcher on a shitty team, whereas with the MVP,
Right.
usually the team's performance usually dictates that award.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Usually.
My National League MVP, it's tough. I don't know.
You're struggling between Rizzo and Bryant, aren't you? That's
What?
all it is.
Put Schwarber in there, buddy. You know what I'm saying? Have a little Schwarber confidence, man. Jeez. No. If I'm gonna pick a non-Cub, it's probably I'll go McCutcheon. I think he could turn around and have a year that nobody is like. I think a lot of people have written him off, kind of like that he's like past his prime, and I think he could have another MVP season. I think he's got it in him.
He's a really fun player to watch.
The National League Cy Young, shits and giggles. I say Arrieta repeats.
All right. Nice. Okay, for me, Trout will continue to produce at an MVP level, but they might just be bored and give it to somebody else this year. So I'll say, in the team's performance will be strong and he'll play a big role in it. I'll say Edwin Encarnacion as the American League MVP.
Wow.
Why not? I looked at his projected numbers look pretty good. I mean, he could hit 40 home runs. So. Yeah, I'll go with him. I know it's a little bit of a wild card, if you will, MVP pick, but I'll take Encarnacion. Hell with it. Why not? And then in the NL, I'm going to go with Rizzo. Actually, I think that having a couple more years under his belt than those other Cubs players, that he's seen more pitches than those guys have. Absolutely. So I think that and I look at his numbers last year; they were great. I mean, his numbers are so good and so well distributed that I think he's going to have an MVP year, and I think he'll win it. So yeah, I'll go with Encarnacion and Rizzo. And for the Cy Young, this was a little tougher. My AL pick, I'm going to go with a kid out of Houston by the name of Colin McHugh.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm going to take him. I think him and Keuchel will both have awesome years. I like what I see of the kid, though. He's also on my fantasy team, so maybe that's driving it.
Where you're going with this?
Yeah. So I'll take Colin McHugh as my my AL Cy Young. And then for the NL, that's tough. I mean, like Ricky said, I Kershaw's kind of he's sort of the Trout of pitching, so he would be an easy pick. I'll say Greinke has another stellar year, and Greinke takes home what might be maybe his last Cy Young, So yeah, I'll say Greinke and McHugh.
All right.
Well, good deal. Well, let's
put it in
come
time
back
capsule.
in 162 games and see how we.
Absolutely. Ricky, thanks so much for coming in tonight, man. We really appreciate it. Yeah.
Hey, I love it. You guys are the best.
Likewise, man. Want to remind everybody to check out super70sports.com. Fun website, fun podcasts. Also, you can follow Ricky on Twitter at Super70Sports. Always tweeting out great stuff.
Did you say there was a book also too?
And Ricky, would you mind telling us to plug the book?
Yeah, I mean we're early to plug, but I'm working on a book about baseball in the 1970s. Hoping to structure it as an oral history.
Okay.
So as of right now, I've conducted about 50 interviews with players from the 1970s.
Cool.
And hoping to get another 20 or 30 under my belt before I start really working on putting it together. But hopefully something in the next 1 to 2 years that we'll see and that I'm really optimistic about and looking forward to putting out there for people.
Well, yeah, hell yeah, man. I hope it's like the next huge like Ball 4 or whatever. I hope it sells 1 million copies.
Man. Thank you. That's my favorite book.
Yeah.
So if it could be 1/20th of that, I'd be happy.
A couple of years ago, back at a library book sale, I got like the hardcover Tomb edition. It's got Ball 4 and Ball 5, like the second version. It's got them all in one.
That's great. One of the most fun aspects of doing the interviews for this is I had about an hour and a half conversation with Jim Bouton last year, and he actually, and this is something if people haven't read the book, they're not going to get, but he's saying it makes a fellow proud to be an Astro for me. It was
very cool.
It was one of the highlights of my life.
Right. Good deal.
Yeah,
awesome.
But it's been a pleasure talking to these guys. I mean, it's just there's something special about getting a phone call and just seeing like a number that you don't recognize, picking up the phone and hearing on the other end of the line, Ricky, this is Bert Blyleven. So
wow.
Yeah.
It's been an adventure. So and most of the guys I've found have been really cool guys, and my fandom for them has my respect has only increased after getting to speak with them.
You could say it. Jay Johnstone was a dick, man.
I have spoken to Jay Johnstone.
No, I was just kidding, Jay. Don't get mad.
I've spoken to him a couple of times, but he's all right. He's all right. Yeah, I'll tell my Jay Johnstone story real quick. When I was in high school, we were reading The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. And I didn't want to read The Good Earth by Pearl S. Buck. So I had taken a Jay Johnstone book, and I tucked it inside of The Good Earth. And so I'm sitting in class reading Jay Johnstone. And when I contacted him, asking him for an interview, I told him the story. I said, when I was a junior in high school, I remember studying in Mr. Kessler's English class reading your book instead of the book I was supposed to read. And about 2 or 3 days later, I get a phone call. I don't know the number. I pick it up, and I hear this voice on the other end of the line say, "So you were sitting in class reading my book, huh?" And it was Jay Johnstone, and he thought it was pretty funny and just a hilarious guy. So
one of my favorite Cubs cards growing up it's like I think 83 or 84 Fleer, and it's Jay Johnstone wearing. It must have been a giveaway that day at a Cubs game. It's a Budweiser hat that is an umbrella, and it's made up of like Budweiser labels. It's great. It's one of the best.
In my mind right now, Levi.
Oh yeah, it's the best, man. I had that card and was just like, "What? What is this?"
Yeah, hilarious.
Jay Johnstone.
Those things were called like the Brockabella, because Lou Brock endorsed those umbrella hats.
Umbrella hats, making them.
I think he was actually maybe owned part of the venture or something.
Yeah, they were Budweiser out of St. Louis.
Yeah, there you go.
Good stuff, guys. Well, anyway, you can check out all of us, I should say you can visit the podcast website at rockchew.com and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at rockinchew. That's in as in Dick Allen, right? There's an N in that. So that's a guy, put him in the book. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so definitely. All right, so at Rock and Chew, you can follow us, visit the website for previous episodes, rockchew.com. Until next time, happy opening day, guys.
Peace.